I would just like to start by saying what an honour it has been to be one of the 12 volunteer organisers of this convention, and I want to quickly thank all of you for actually showing up and supporting it. It's such an amazing feeling to be on stage right now in front of a room full of so many like-minded people. So thank you, and thanks to my fellow organisers for inviting me to speak. You might recognise me from around the traps. As Lawrence said, I've had the privilege of playing the role of spokesperson for the Atheist Foundation of Australia. You might be wondering, how does someone get that gig, spokesperson for the AFA? Well, at the time, I met all of the key criteria. I was not old and I didn't have a beard, and so I think they were looking for a sort of a new look. And I actually got to be interviewed. I was on morning television the other day. Did anyone happen to catch that? I'm not sure. Yeah. Oh, okay. Cool. I didn't know atheists watched Channel 10. I was actually interviewed by a Bill O'Reilly wannabe from New Zealand, and I just wanted to quickly take this opportunity to say that I don't think that Christians are stupid, but I do think that even very smart people can believe false things. Now that that's cleared up, the title of my talk is "A Fresh Generation of Freethinkers is Among Us," and I hope that I'm going to inspire you by sharing with you some of the stories of a relatively new student-based grassroots movement in Australia that is mobilising young people to be advocates for science, reason and secular values. To start, let me give you a little bit of a picture about my background, tell you my story, how I became president of the University of Melbourne Secular Society, and then with a group of other students found the Freethought Student Alliance. I was raised in a fairly irreligious household. Although my parents were Anglican, I was sort of raised to believe that there was a God and there was a heaven and a hell, but it was sort of around the same time I was told that there was an Easter Bunny and a Santa Claus, and I think when I figured out that those things weren't real, it probably did cast a bit of a doubt in my mind about those other things. But all in all, I never really had to think about religion too much. I think it's one of the privileges of growing up in Australia, which is a largely secular population. Unless you're unlucky, you can probably live most of your life without having too many run-ins with religious belief. And I remember when I was young asking my mum why we didn't go to church, because they went to church on The Simpsons, and she said, well, church is on Sunday, you play football on Sunday, so what would you rather do? And that was a pretty a no-brainer for me. So I guess in my teenage years, religion wasn't on my radar. I never felt the urge to find out whether or not any of it was actually true. I think maybe, as Sam pointed to earlier, I think I was actually a little bit afraid that maybe when I died, that was the end, so I didn't really want to think about it. And also it was kind of nice to feel that maybe there was some being out there looking out for me in his mysterious ways. But that all changed for me when I was 17 and I went on student exchange in the United States of America. I was situated in the state of Kansas, which is kind of like the buckle of the Bible Belt, home of Westboro Baptist Church. I was there in 2005 when they introduced intelligent design into the high school biology curriculum, and they voted overwhelmingly to ban gay marriage. And so it kind of gave me a window into the effects that religion can have on a society when they take it really seriously and really literally. So believe it or not, I went to youth group twice a week. I went to church. Some people say, well, you know, if you're not really religious, why did you go along to that? But going on exchange is all about experiencing a different culture, and going to church is just what they did there. And so I was more than happy to go along. In my first youth group, the pastor actually got up and said, it's generally understood that the world is about 6,000 years old. And I looked around and people were nodding, and I thought, I was pretty sure I'd read that it was older. And I actually turned out to be the only kid in my school who believed in the theory of evolution. I had never studied biology before. I was pretty sure it was a scientific fact, but I wasn't really sure. And so it was this experience that galvanized me to read up on it as much as I could. And I didn't really care what the answer was. What I cared about was what was true for the first time. And during this process, I had to teach myself how to think critically, how to evaluate the claims that I was hearing, and eventually over time I came to understand and appreciate science like I never had before, and realize that it was really the best tool, the best process for figuring out the reality of the world that we live in. Upon returning home to Australia, I thought I was probably the only Australian who felt strongly about these issues. Also, all of a sudden, my eyes were open to the effects that religion was having on our society that I'd never noticed before, and I was kind of determined to sort of do something about it. So when I started up at the University of Melbourne, we had 13 religious clubs on our campus and a Christian union that had a really pervasive presence. I think, when I was at university, I felt that it should be a secular institution, sort of a bastion of actual knowledge, but students couldn't really get from one class to another without knowing when their next Bible study was, whether it was the chalk on the ground or the posters on the wall or the flyer you were handed. And I eventually figured out that I wasn't the only student on campus who felt that perhaps it was time to start up an alternative group for non-religious students. In fact, I didn't realize this, but a few students had actually set up a table on campus, grabbed a copy of The God Delusion, put that on one side, grabbed a bit of paper for people to write their email address, put it on the other, and they collected like 30 email addresses within the space of an hour from people that walked by and saw it and said, whatever they're doing, I want to be a part of that. So eventually, with those 30 emails, we had enough people to actually start up the club, and we affiliated, and we came up with a set of aims, and I just want to read them to you quickly. One, to encourage freedom from superstition, irrationalism, and dogma, to further the acceptance and application of science, reason, and critical thinking on campus and in the wider community. To stimulate debate surrounding ideas of religion, science, philosophy, politics, and ethics. To defend the separation of church and state, individual freedoms, and civil liberties for all persons, regardless of race, sex, gender, class, creed, ethnicity, religion, sexual orientation, and disability. To create a united campus community for freethinkers, skeptics, atheists, agnostics, and humanists in the pursuit of these common goals. So come orientation day, we signed up about 300 students to be members of our club, making it one of the largest non-faculty-based clubs on campus. We held a mixture of sort of social as well as educational events. On the social side, we held pub nights and parties and tried to build a community of freethinkers and help like-minded people to connect to one another. I think one of the accusations against secular youth is that we're not particularly engaged in the community and we don't participate in charity work. And statistically, it actually backs that up. We don't. But I don't think that's because of a lack of compassion. I think it's because we lack the infrastructure that the church setting provides to actually get involved in those things as our religious youth do. And so that was another thing that we wanted to sort of build and operate on campus, was a sense of atheists getting out there as atheists, doing a bit of community work and use the infrastructure that the university provided to get people together and participate in that. In terms of educational events, we held forums, discussions, and group debates, some of which attracted a couple of hundred students. We ended up developing quite a healthy relationship, surprisingly maybe, with the Christian Union on campus. While apprehensive at first, they came to recognise that we, like them, really cared about the big questions of life. Is there a God? What is the purpose of life? And how did we get here? And I think in the end, they were pretty excited that they had other students that they could discuss these issues with, and a really largely apathetic student population. And I'd like to also echo the sentiments made by Leslie Cannold yesterday about the need to build coalitions and cross bridges to work together with religious groups to fight for secularism. I think that that's immensely important, and that's one of the things that we're also trying to do on a grassroots level on university campuses. Another important thing that our groups do, I think, is just have a presence on campus. I think university is that time in a person's life where they're figuring out their worldview and what they believe in, and atheism, rationalism, skepticism absolutely needs to be one of the options on campuses along with all the smorgasbord of other worldviews and opinions out there. And even if students don't join, if they're not completely on board just yet, I think it's important that they know that atheist and secular groups are out there. So speaking about having a presence on campus, one of the fun campaigns we actually ran was in response to our pavements being filled up with Bible quotes and prayer meetings and everything like that. We decided to hold a Chalk of Reason campaign, and we got all of our members to submit their favourite free thinking quotes throughout history, and we got a team together and we went out there and hit the pavements and chalked up a lot of the quotes that you're probably seeing on the slides in between the talks today. And we actually had people stop by and look and read and notice that we weren't Christians, and then thank us that finally something reasonable was being written on the pavements. During this time, we also realized that completely independently of one another, there were other groups just like ours that were popping up on campuses all around Australia. And I think thanks to the power of Facebook and blogging, we were able to start connecting with one another, and eventually we figured out that there were about 10 groups at the time, back in 2008, that already existed or had just recently started up. And we found that the challenges that each group were facing were the same. Running a club and being a student is really hard work. I have a saying that I think there's three things you can do at university. One is run a club, 2, get good grades, and 3 is have a social life, and you only actually get to choose 2 of those things. And that's sort of a bit of a problem, and the students were getting burnt out and run down, and some of the groups were struggling, and also the students were being thrown into leadership positions because there was just no one else to really do that role. And so what we wanted to do was draw on our collective experiences, work together a bit, and strengthen and grow this sort of new student-based community of free thinkers. It's worth noting that there are already groups like this set up in North America. You're probably familiar with the Secular Student Alliance and the Centre for Inquiry on campus. These groups do an amazing job managing some 300 odd campus groups across North America and in other parts of the world. But being so far away, we felt that there was a significant divide in terms of our culture, in terms of the attitudes of Australians towards religion, and also the political climate here, and the issues relating to secularism were also quite different. And secondly, the university structure was actually a bit different. The ways in which groups have to affiliate and become involved were different. So we felt that there was a bit of a divide, and we wanted to address that and create a kind of subgroup underneath them to work at a national level. And Centre for Inquiry and the Secular Student Alliance were actually both really instrumental in helping us set up, and we're really supportive of them, so I thank them for that as well. So in 2010, on the eve of the last Global Atheist Convention, we founded the Freethought University Alliance, and we've since just only recently changed our name to the Freethought Student Alliance because we're actually getting in there on high school groups as well. Since we formed in 2010, we've helped set up new campus groups around Australia, and we now have 21 affiliated groups around Australia. We've held statewide networking events between our student leaders, coordinated campus speaking tours for the likes of our lovely MC, Kylie Sturgis, our MC from last night, Simon Taylor, and also Fiona Patton from the Australian Sex Party. We also have a really comprehensive speaker database online on our website for both old and new campus groups to utilise if they want to get in touch and invite someone who believes in their causes and has sort of a high profile and come and speak for nothing on their campus. I think one other thing I'd really love to mention is we gave away 15 free passes to this 2012 Global Atheist Convention via a Students' Grants Initiative, and coordinated travel grants and couch surfing to help interstate students be able to afford to attend both this event and to attend the Global Atheist Convention today, and also an event that we had on Friday, which I think is our biggest feat yet, which was our first ever student leadership conference, where we had over 100 students from more than 18 different universities attend. And thanks. And I'd like to give a quick shout out and thank Richard Dawkins, Lawrence Krauss, Daniel Dennett, and PZ Myers for meeting up with some of the students over lunch, which was, I think, a really, really inspiring thing for those young people. We also flew out Debbie Goddard from Centre for Inquiry on campus to talk about CFI's 20 years of experience doing this kind of activism in North America. And we also hosted Chris Stedman from the Harvard University Humanist Chaplaincy, and we spoke to Liz Liddell from the Secular Student Alliance via Skype. I hope that the students who attended, who are all here today, were inspired and motivated and will go back home and to their campus groups with new ideas, new tools, and also new friends. I encourage anyone attending a university to get in touch with their local campus group if they're not already. And if your campus doesn't have a campus group, consider starting one and reach out to the Freethought Student Alliance because we're here to help. We're also proudly supported by the Atheist Foundation of Australia, the Rationalist Society, the Council of Australian Humanist Societies and the Australian Skeptics. But we do need more support. We're up against groups who have paid staff and are also driven to do the work of God. So if you're not a student, consider donating. We have a table in the foyer. Also, just simply, as Leslie Cannold said yesterday, connect with us on Facebook and Twitter. Numbers mean everything. These kids are doing amazing, inspiring stuff. They're our future leaders, our future politicians, our future lawyers, our future court justices, and they need your help to continue doing the amazing work that they're doing. Thank you so much.